Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's OPA Lunch and Learn. So the usual thing, waiting for Zoom to let everybody into the meeting. Those been with us before know that I do a little bit of a chit chat here, just fill in the time while we wait for the attendees to join. Those that are new to us, I'm going to just give you a quick update on how it's going to work when we get towards there. And I'm just keeping an eye on the number of people coming in to the meeting. And it looks like we're getting there towards the end of everybody is joining us, which is great. So quick update for you. As usual, the Q&A is open, so that's where you're going to place your questions. The chat is closed, but there will be messages popping up in there, links, so on, so keep an eye on that as well. So just to remind you, Q&A is at the bottom of the screen. If you can't see it, you might need to click on the three dots and it'll then pop up and you can post your questions in there. So I think with that, I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to bring Jane in to do the introductions for us. Jane, hi.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jane Hunt. I'm the Vice President of OPA. I just got back from our national show in Charleston, and if you didn't have a chance to see it yet, it will be up through April. It's a truly amazing show at Reinhardt Fine Art. And a couple of housekeeping things. Let's see, I wanted to remind all the associate members that you have through May 15th to enter the online showcase. And additionally, you should have received your prospectuses for the Eastern and Western shows in the mail already. If not, visit our website or contact the office. And I think Mark will put the link to our website in the chat right now, so you have it. Today, our guest is Julie Snyder, Scottish-born artist and founder of Workshops in France. Workshops in France has gained the reputation for organizing and delivering highly inspiring, distraction-free workshops that benefit the art community. Their workshops are based in chateaus or grand estates in France, Scotland, and Italy. Julie is here today to share an essential guide to finding the perfect workshop that has the right location, length, degree of comfort, and the right price. And most importantly, how to get the most out of that experience. I've had the great pleasure of teaching with Workshops in France, so I can attest that they put on a really fun workshop. Welcome to world traveling artist, friend, Julie Snyder.
Hey, am I live now?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Well, hi, Jane. It's so good to see you here again. And it's so good to be able to connect with the Oil Painters of America, of whom I am a member. And I'm also an oil painter.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming today, Julie. So I'm going to hop right into some questions, if you don't mind. Can you tell us about your background, where you grew up, and how that influenced you as an artist?
Absolutely. So I was born in Glasgow, Scotland, which was actually a great place to be from, I've got to be honest. I was very fortunate that my parents were a writer and an artist. My mum was the artist, my dad was a writer. And I grew up in a very, very supportive environment for arts. When it was discovered that I was an artist, I was a toddler, I was 3 or 4 years old, trying to make flesh tones out of some 3 primary crayons, primary colored crayons. You know, my mother spotted, she goes, "Oh, so you're an artist?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." And so that was the end of that. So everybody just expected that that's what I was. And so art school was obviously in the horizon, and lots and lots of drawing. My mother taught me how to draw. So that was really good. So I started off very, very young. And Glasgow itself, even though it was known then as a very industrial town, is actually a hub for art. It's been like that since the late 1800s. Glasgow has always been a magnet for arts because they had money there. The industrials had money, and they grew massive art collections. So I grew up in my, just taking my younger brothers and sisters to the museums and growing up there. So yeah, it was really, really cultured. It's great.
That's fantastic. So how did you make that transition then from commercial to fine art? What inspired that change?
Well, actually, when I hit my teenage years, so, I actually had a huge family. So I was the eldest daughter of 7 kids, which also is, I think, part of my management skills, put it that way. But when I was turned 19, I went to Ireland for a little bit, and I came back, and I just suddenly got this travel bug, and I ended up traveling and going around, and I ended up living in, believe it or not, I had a wild sort of ride there, which was fantastic for me. It was exactly what I needed, but I ended up like working on yachts and traveling with yachts, and ended up, I think, in Mallorca, Spain. And there I just felt like I could stay there for a while. So I traveled all over Europe and I ended up back there. And so being there was no safety net. There was nothing. So I had to really make it go right. And I had this artistic talent, but so I just did whatever jobs that I could. So I did some big paintings and commissions, but I also ended up being a sign painter and a graphic designer. And I'm actually very autodidactic. I can learn just about anything I want. And so I taught myself like basically the graphic arts and how to do all the pre-press for printing, just because that was what was needed. Because people would ask me, can you do blah, blah? And I always say yes. And then as soon as they leave, I go, oh my God, how am I going to do that? So then I have to find out, right? So that's basically how I became a graphic designer. But I ended up coming to America, which was interesting. And there I was a commercial designer and illustrator for many years, you know, and so I worked in the advertising industry. So that's basically how that crossover happened.
Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of us started out as graphics, illustrators, and that kind of thing, and then moved to fine arts. So that's interesting to hear that. So you mentioned some of your traveling. I know that you travel constantly. Is that sort of when that began then?
Well, I think it definitely began when I turned 20. I just got the idea that I couldn't, you know, how can I say this? Like Scotland, I'd outgrown my environment, which was, I will say, fantastic. I got a fantastic education, but I had itchy feet. And I was a wild child, and I just had to explore, I had to get out of my comfort zone. And I learned a lot by doing that. I was just mentioning to somebody the other day, it gets a little psychoanalytical here, but I was thinking, you know, I like it when my life is not that predictable, when it's slightly dangerous. I'm like, oh, that's so good. So travel, you know, because there was so little prediction about what was going to go on, because my sweet spot those days was waking up in a country I'd never been before, listening to a language I didn't understand, tasting some food for the first time. I'm in heaven right there. So I just loved to do that. So I was a traveler and I was an artist. So my beingness was an artist, but my activity was traveling. You can see that. So like you can't shake off one or the other. But I do very well when I'm in action, and it's not just an activity, it's kind of like an operating state. So as soon as like I get into action, and if you travel, you're always in action. I just love it. So it has influenced me too. It's not like I would go around all the museums necessarily when I was very young, because honestly, I was just living by my wits, going from one thing to the next. Talk about a gig economy before there was a gig economy. That's what I was doing, you know. Okay, crew on a yacht, I'm there. Where are we going? Greece, great, off for Greece. Okay, so what can I do? You know, you're going to be washing dishes. Okay, I'm going to be washing dishes. So you do that until you get enough money to leave, and then you go somewhere else and you do the grape picking. So that's all in my youth, but it was really great. And so now, and I've grown up, I still travel, but I don't do grape picking and I don't necessarily wash dishes, you know, which is good, right?
I've actually seen you wash dishes, but that's all other, just in a chateau though, so that's a bit different.
Yeah. Well, we have someone in the village who comes in and helps us do that, and she just gets so enthusiastic about washing dishes. I'm like, okay, let's do it. You know, it's great.
I think it's great. So you mentioned that all this travel influences your works. I'm assuming that there's benefits and sort of pitfalls. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, you know, benefits are that you have art in your back pocket. I think it was, I don't know who said it was either Queen Victoria or maybe it was Winston Churchill, but they mentioned that artists were almost the most dangerous people in society because they could go into any level of society as an artist. And it's true. So when I was in Greece and I was trying to connect with that culture, who found me very strange because I was this very independent young woman, and there wasn't a lot of very independent young women at that time in Greece at all. So to connect and be accepted, then I would start doing portraits, and people would they see this other side, and it's this, you know, obviously it's another language altogether. So that really helped. The pitfalls, I think, are the studios, because when you're traveling as much as I do, then setting up to do like a body of work becomes a little bit tricky. So, but the benefits then is the plein air, and you're always out there, and everything being so new just sets all your senses on fire, and you just open to everything. So the sensation of it is fantastic. And so when I'm traveling in Europe, which I do about 6 months out of every year, like time seems to elongate. It's like chewing gum. I just can't believe what that was 3 weeks ago. It feels like it was 3 months ago. And by the end of it, you think, oh, I've been away for 3 years, but you haven't. You've been away for 6 months. And then the exact opposite happens in America, right? You come back here, I'm doing all my admin and marketing and things, and time, you just never have enough time to do anything. But traveling is just, yeah, it's just part and parcel of who I am. I just absolutely adore it. And I just make it. It is my life, you know. So it opens me to many cultures. I meet lots of people, and I meet a lot of artists. And for that is amazing to me, because actually I think artists are probably the most important people on the planet. And if you don't know what I mean by that, like if you go to a country where there is no art, like per se, I was in Yugoslavia when it was Yugoslavia in 1980. It was a communist country, and it was as if somebody had pulled the plug and all the color had gone down the drain. And it just like, I could feel it was like my bones were turning to lead. It was just this visceral feeling. You go where there's no art, and then you get to appreciate, well, how fantastic it is when you go to a place where there is art and there's color and life. You know, over there it was all navy blue, brown and gray, cars, clothing, posters. Like it was so bizarre. But I wasn't there for very long, really just passing through. So it's given me a big appreciation for art and culture. And, you know, when you're in Europe, for example, it's just layer upon layer. I mean, look at the chateau behind me. That one was built in 1100s. This is the time of the Crusaders. I'm actually going there very shortly. In about 3 weeks, I'll be at that chateau. So no matter where you look, you know, there's layers of history and architecture and aesthetics, and it's very taken for granted. It's woven into the tapestry of life there. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. So you have this sort of layered history with traveling. I'm assuming that positions you really as an ideal candidate to promote or to run destination workshops.
Yeah, it does in a way. I was also a Girl Scout leader. If you ask me, that was probably the skill that I use most, you know, doing that, being good at organizing. So I'm pretty good at that. And I can, yeah, I think being that, and then also because it's not just about running workshops, it's creating the whole world. It's creating my whole world. So it's like working with instructors and contracts and marketing and promotion. So there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And I just happen to be pretty good at that. I'm not saying it's my favorite thing, but I know what that's all about. And yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I can attest Julie is very good at organizing and just rolling with things. We got a flat tire in the middle of nowhere in France. And I don't know, she just kind of stayed very calm and dealt with it. It was pretty interesting to see. So, all right. So workshops in France, talk about how and where that started.
Yeah, that was interesting. So I was with my family in Europe, with my children. So I have 3 daughters, and at that time they were grade schoolers. So it was probably about 2005-ish. And we'd gone over to visit my family, and we went to France. My sister has a house in France, her husband's French. So we were in that village, and my children were kidnapped by my family. And they said, Julie, just go paint. And I was like, okay. And I was all concerned about the kids. They said, just go paint. So I went out to paint, and it was just this beautiful, just south of Loire landscape, kind of northern France. And it was very pastoral. And I just fell in love with it. And I remember it began to rain, and it was underneath literally a corrugated tin roof. And so the noise of the rain was there. And I said, well, whatever, I'm going to make this my studio. So I set up my easel, and I was there, and I just started to grin from ear to ear. And I just realized, oh my God, this is exactly like how how historic artists have painted. They're just standing here, they're in the landscape, they're looking at this. This must have been like Corot and people in the Barbizon, this is how they would have been. I was like, this is magic, and I just sort of, permeated everything. And I just thought, oh, I've got to do this more, but how can I do it? How can I have this life? Well, how about we came across with a group of artists, because that would be really fun. How can I do that? I have kids. Okay, so I realized, number one, I had to wait for the kids to be old enough to separate the coloreds from the whites, wash everything in cold, right? Then I could just say, okay, I can take off for 2 weeks. They can fend for themselves. And then I figured I could do it with artists. And so my mind was, look, if I do it with artists, then maybe I can pull this off, because I was so broken those days. Like, the money wasn't there. I was busy raising a family, and I didn't have that time to do that much art, but it just, it was just what it was. And so I put the idea out there, and the first thing I did was actually a pilot. So it was more like an invitational, where 13 women artists came together. At that time, it's been represented in Cape Cod by the Addison Fine Art Gallery. And then I was represented in LA by Danielac Fine Art and the Siegel Fine Art Gallery. So I got together with some of my LA girl buddies, and I said, hey, do you want to go to France? And of course they all said, yeah. And then I called the gallery on Cape Cod, and Helen Addison said, yes, if you go to France, then please, let's do a show. And I'm like, if we're going to do a show, why don't we invite the other female artists that you represent? So it became that. We were all like, mid-career artists. So we went, and that was so fantastic. I went, oh, okay, this works. And I learned how to do all the logistical stuff as well at the same time. And so 2 years later, I launched the first workshops in France, which at the time was called Paint Provence. And the reason I went to Provence was like, how could I improve on this fabulous experience? So we're in this beautiful rural northern France town, which, by the way, is completely abandoned. All the kids, all the young people have gone to the cities. So, I mean, if you're not an artist, it could look quite sad, but as an artist, these tumbling down buildings and everything was fantastic, but the weather wasn't as predictable. So I moved it to Provence. And then I also thought, if I want a place where we're all together, so it has to be a big enough place. So that's why I decided to go with chateaus. I've never done a hotel. I've never done a bed and breakfast. It's not my particular model. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I've always had a chateau experience, so that we're in our bubble. We create our own bubble, and that's where we're all at. And it's great. It's really great. So that's why I do it like that. And that's how it started.
Okay. Well, and what would you say are some of the highlights or what makes workshops in France unique?
Meeting other artists for me is that community that has grown around what I do. That is so precious to me. Not just the instructors, of whom I've worked with such amazing instructors, as you can imagine, but I also get to just be with artists, and every artist has a story, where it's all so magical. I think that's basically the highlights for me. And then, you also, like I say, it also gives you an in the culture. So as artists, people are very open to meeting us and, showing us things. The people that own, the proprietors that own the premises and the venues I use, are always so appreciative of the artists, because we notice everything, wow, look at that, look at that, look at that. We're sort of visual feasting, so there's huge benefits to do that. But yeah, it's my world is very, very rich with the community that we've grown. Everybody comes to workshops in France. It's kind of family. Like since you came, Jane, right? I mean, we just, we might not talk to each other for a little while, but when we do, it's just picking right up from where we left off. She's my little sister, by the way. Just so
it's true. She's my big sister. It's funny. It's really true, because for people who might be thinking, oh, I don't know about destination workshops, I'm, kind of a homebody. I am the most introverted human being and sensitive human being that there is. And so I went, and then, I'm kind of shy and introverted, but it becomes like a big family, and it's true. And by the end, we were all fast friends, because we're hanging out, we're having dinner together. Everyone gets to know each other. It's an intense bonding experience. And so anyway, I think that artists as a whole, we're a sensitive people, and it's great to have this kind of focused camaraderie. I can say that from my
It really is. And then artists, we also get to create, I don't know if all artists realize this, but you're all entrepreneurs in your own way, and entrepreneurs are artists in their way, because we're all we're flying the airplane as we're building it. That's what the analogy is now. But I also love to collaborate. So when artists come on board, you tend to, network a lot and find out. And I have so many people I can visit, and people share. They're so sharing so much information. It's fantastic. And then you meet people. So one of the people I met along this line was Vanessa Roth, with Vanessa Roth Fine Art down Laguna Beach. And she actually created this amazing program, which was called The Americans in Paris, which she originally created in order to bring leading American artists to Paris, to introduce them to not just the paintings and the museums and the multi-figured concepts, but also to bring artists together and see what happens. The same way as when the Impressionists got together, or the writers got together in Paris. mean, this is kind of like what we're doing, you know. So she approached me about working with me and doing a collaboration, which we're doing, was called the Americans in Paris. So we did one in 22 where we brought, you know, fabulous painters together in the south of France. And also, you know, now we're going to go in 2024, beginning of 2024, I have C.W. Mundy, Kwong Ho, Adrian Stein, Vanessa Roth, and we are creating a chateau program just south of Paris, especially for them, and it includes a portion which is in Paris as well, to do those things that we're talking about. How lucky am I, right, to be able to be part of this? So, you know, it's a lot of like working out, and I have a great ninja team. So Shirley's out there finding out, oh, you know, how much it costs to enter into all these museums, and how to get onto one of those boats on the Seine, and how to work with caterers and things like that. And, you know, it's all go, 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 but it's such a fantastic thing. So, you know, working with artists is just fabulous, you know, and it kind of makes what we do unique, I must admit. But it's also given me a lot of experience. So I'm excited today to share like the essential guide to finding a workshop that fits you, not just our workshops, but there's so many out there. So, you know, I encourage all artists to get out there and paint. I really do, with other artists.
Yeah, totally agree. Couldn't have said it better. So on that note, I think Julie's going to share a presentation with us that gets into everything she just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly that. There we go. Hey, so here am I can make myself just a little bigger. It's okay, so you can see me when I'm talking here. All right, cool. So when you're looking for a workshop, you've got these different factors, and they are what you should decide and base your choice upon, not necessarily maybe the first thing you see, but you obviously have to look at the time, which means how long something is and when it is. And that's usually one of the major factors, right? If you're teaching, then you have the school breaks, or if you're, you know, also if you're a parent, and then there's just different times. Many people don't have that. If you're retired, you can go anytime. So that's great too. Also, if you're going to go in the middle of the summer, you know, then location is really important, because you don't want to go somewhere that's necessarily really, really hot. So that's a factor as well. So we do ours mainly in the shoulder, so at the spring and then the fall. And we have a Scottish program in the summer, because there's June, July in Scotland, and then there's winter in Scotland. So we go in June, July, because that's the only time to go. Then you want to go like for the type. So let me just bring up the next slide. These are the things. So there's time, type, what kind is it, you know, who's teaching it, where it is, and also what's included. You want to look at the company, and they're you know, are they legit? Do they take friends, partners, if that's a consideration? And of course, one of the key considerations has to be budget, right? So when we look at the time, we just talked about that. How long is it and when is it? Pretty obvious. So when we look at the type, we're talking about, well, is it instructed? So we do that, we call that a workshop, or is it an art retreat, which is basically uninstructed? So those are the differences, but there are other differences too. So an instructed workshop, I mean, a lot of people attend workshops more local to where you are, and they're very academic, but a destination workshop should be a little different, right? It has to include some of the destination. I mean, why go all the way to France or Italy if you're just going to go and stay inside a studio and paint, right? So it has to include that. So that is important. And the other difference is when you're with an instructor, you're going to get that learning, which is great, and the focus will be on that. It just is, you know, I've done enough of these to know that the focus is on that. Yes, it's on the culture and the environment and the friendship, but a lot of it's on that. But if you go to an art retreat, which means uninstructed, it's a completely different focus. And for me, who never had the camp experience that I always dreamed about as a child, that you definitely have in America and actually many countries of the world, it's kind of like that. It's like camp for grown-ups with art and wine. So it's really fun, and it's very much about the community. It's about all the different artists. And that means sometimes when you go on that, or a residency, it's artists of many different types that come together, which make it really interesting. And you can look over each other's shoulders and you can learn a lot. So I love that. So also, by the way, do you even need instruction? Like, there's a lot of mid-career artists that don't really need instruction. They just need the experience. Check out the art retreats, because you can go there, you can create work, you can create either studies for which you can do later work, or you can just create work there. And by the way, that would be an expensible item too. So consider that. We have lots of artists that just come, make inventory, go back, sell it, turn up again the next year. We have a lot of repeats that do that. And also, is it static or a tour? So sometimes you'll go to a workshop and it's here, blah, 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 blah. You know, you're moving around a lot, and sometimes it's very, you know, in one place. We try and mix it up a little bit so that it's definitely in one place. That way you don't have to unpack and pack up again. But we take you places, and in the future you're going to hear something very exciting about that. I'm not going to let that out of the bag until we have that basically set up. Okay, so here we go, the instructor. So who's teaching? Do you have a high interest in the instructor? Most times we get people who are real fans of the instructors, but sometimes you just get somebody who just turns up, doesn't even know the instructor. I'm like, you don't know who this person is, but they just, no, I just decided to come. So fine. But you have to kind of love the work. You have to find a connection there, right? And so how do they teach, and are they patient? You know, because if you're a beginner and then they're only interested in teaching a masterclass, or you know, if you're very advanced but they're only interested in teaching something else, you just have to see if that's the right fit for you. And then are they fun, and do they love to teach, right? Because some artists are brilliant artists, but they don't necessarily have that aptitude to be an interesting teacher, and they're not that engaged. But some artists are just love it. I mean, personally, I think it's a privilege to teach. I personally don't teach on the workshops, although I do some mentoring on the art retreats, but I have enough to do, okay? But, you know, if you teach, you have to love it, I think, to keep it interesting. Okay, and then location, we discussed that as well. But, you know, you can go on a destination workshop in your own country. You don't have to necessarily travel, because it's part of, you know, the overall picture, isn't it? You have to think what's best for you. And if it's in a place you really wanted to visit, then by all means. That's why I chose the south of France, because it has such an artistic lineage there. So the Impressionists painted there, the light's beautiful. Same in Italy, and in Scotland it's completely opposite. But we go at that time of year, we have these really long days. We can paint. The sun doesn't set in June until like 11 p.m. So you can imagine fabulous light. Okay, so what's included? So this is important, because I look occasionally at another workshop and I'll say, you know, what's included. So the price looks really good, but actually they don't include, like, you know, pickup and all that, and they don't include all sorts of things. So, you know, you have to look at that, like, is this included? And especially if I mean, the price is not an issue, but you want to know, am I going to get picked up at the airport? You know, am I expected to go and find these people in the middle of absolutely nowhere? I mean, how do I do that, right? And then can they supply what you need, whether it's, you know, actually I need a table and I'm not bringing a table on an airplane. You're like, can you get me a table, or can you get me whatever it is you need? And then solvent. So we supply all the disposable stuff. So you don't have to bring solvent, paper towels, trash bags, gloves, liquid, things like that, which are a little bit harder to travel with. We always supply all those things. I know I'm talking to oil painters here, but we also supply things for watercolor painters should they need them. And then also, are you taken care of? And so is that communication put in? So are you taking care, if you have allergies to certain foods, you have to know that you're going to be able to eat. And also, by the way, is the food included? Because a lot of times you'll see a great price, and because they're running out of a bed and breakfast or a hotel, it really only includes breakfast. So you're on your own for these other meals, whereas we have everything included. It's all included, just turn up, you know. There's 2 meals out, I think we do out where people pay for their own meals, but everything else is just included. So who's running it? All right, so you look at the website, you should try and find some testimonials, you know, and reach out to them. If you don't see what you need, you can ask them, you know, I'm thinking of coming with my buddy, you know, what kind of accommodation have you had? Can I talk to someone that's been to your workshop before? Can you send me an email where I can get a recommendation? And you should get all those things. And then your company, you know, you can assess them by their communication level. Did they answer your question? Did you even get a reply? You know, do they have terms and conditions that, you know, all of these kinds of things. So you just look over the website, you should be able to find that. Moving on here. Yeah, so here's another one, friends and partners. So this can be a deal breaker. It can be a blessing. It can be a boon. It depends how you look at it. So some people, you know, it's a big expense. It's a kind of like a bucket list item. And it's actually easier for them to actually bring their non-painting partner than it is for them to travel alone in that relationship. So it's easier to basically get the other person's agreement. So we run a program for the artists But our non-painting partners, we also make sure that there's plenty of that for them to do, which is actually not very difficult because, you know, as an artist, you're standing still and you're painting at your easel, but the non-painters, they can go anywhere. They can go into that church and check it out, or check out a show over there, or sit down and have a cup of coffee, or go on a wine tasting, lots of things. So that is a very important factor. And then for other people, they're like, there is no way I'm bringing my spouse or partner because I know I'll get no painting done. So it just depends on you, right? So just, you know, if it's we have people come over because it was a special time in their life, they hit a significant birthday, or it was a certain anniversary. So there's definitely ways of looking at that. I think probably one of the most important things that people look at, of course, is the budget, because it's not always something that you maybe have that disposable income for, you know, so you have to look at that price point. And what are you looking for? Are you looking for a very deluxe experience, or are you looking for a very inexpensive dorm room experience? Now, our workshops, I don't think are expensive because I am not rich. Okay, so I just spend everything back into the workshops and just make them what they are. But it's definitely, you know, something you would want to consider. And if you think, I don't even have the money to even consider this, think again, you know, reach out and ask, because there are scholarship programs. We run a scholarship program. There are sometimes work study programs where you can do some kind of exchange with the company to get a break, or, you know, to figure out some kind of exchange with them. So never say, oh, there's no way I can do this, you know. You would have to be able to exchange like work or labor or something, unless you won the scholarship, which is a whole totally different thing. But also with the budget, you have to take into consideration you travel, which is important. And I always recommend that you get travel insurance. In fact, it's a requirement for our workshops if people get it, because it's not expensive. And if things go sideways and you lose your luggage, then don't worry, we'll take you into the store and we'll buy you a whole new set of clothes, and you can charge your insurance company for that. And materials too, by the way. But yeah, so while I'm talking about the scholarship program, I just want to just do a little bragging here, because we have it. Our first scholarship student, by the way, in 2019 was Kyle Ma. And Kyle was definitely a merit scholarship, because I just was so blown away with how good he was. And I met him at one of the plein air conventions. So it was he was only 19 at the time, so it was very cute for him to come. And of course, he chose to paint with Kwang Ho in France. And that was a great experience. I had to talk to his mom to make sure she knew that, you know, we would look after him and make sure he was airport pickup and all of that. But Kyle's now a master. He's a master painter of the OPA. So we're really, really proud to have helped him a little bit on that path. But, you know, he's actually the master of his own field. Like, he deserves all the credit. But we're working right now with Emiliano. He's from Italy. And Emiliano won the scholarship because he couldn't find a basic, good, traditional teaching or learning program in Italy, of all places. So you have these atelier programs you may have heard of. There's some in Florence, there's some in Rome, and they're excellent, but they're more workshop experiences. Or there's the Florence Academy, and it's actually a full program, but it's actually out of his budget as an Italian. So when he found the scholarship, we gave it to him because he wanted to start his own small atelier. And he also really loved the work of Susan Lyons. So he came for Susan Lyons' workshop, and he met Susan and Scott and hung out with them for 10 days. But we'd also met him the year before in Italy, because we were there and we connected, and we really, really liked him. So I asked him if he would come and help me and the group and the team by being part of the crew for our American in Paris experience at the beginning, right before Susan's workshop. And I just got to say, you know, this is why we do what we do, because it's so awesome, right? He now has representation in the United States of America. He sold artwork. He got to hang out with Casey Childs, with Olga Cremon, with Aldo Balding, with Vanessa Roth, and with Michelle Dunaway, and then later with Susan Lyon and Scott Burdick. I mean, just how awesome is that? You know, his WhatsApp is just off the charts now, because he's connected with all these people, and his life has become so much, it's totally changed. And he's actually coming this year to help out with Daniel Gerhardt's. So he's coming to Daniel Gerhardt's, and he's also turning up next week. I'll be meeting him actually in the south of France, where he's going to come to Teresa Oaxaca and Aldo Balding. So him being in Europe, he's become very important to me, because he's a great artist, and he can drive a stick shift. So as you can imagine, he's become very important. So isn't that great though, you know, that you can do these things? I mean, I do things because I can, and that's the bottom line. I think, oh, I could do that, so let's do it. So right now we're trying to get Ritesh from India, and unfortunately he's having a bit of trouble with getting a visa, which is not that easy if you're from you know, a slightly underdeveloped country. So we're still working on that, in progress. Watch this space. But we do have a scholarship program, and we're very proud of it. So how do you get the most out of an overseas workshop? This is my favorite part, because now you've chosen where to go, right? Now I really want everybody to listen up and get the most out of it, right? Because I am an all-you-can-eat kind of experienced person. You know, I think, oh, I'm going here, so what's all the things that could just, you know, be fabulous about it, okay? So before you go, you have to do something, and then during it, you have to do something, and then afterwards, you know, that is very important too. So before you go, if you were able to like really list your expectations and develop like what you want to get out of the workshop, then you are more likely to get that out of the workshop. If you go without a plan, don't expect to come back with actual, you know, items that you really wanted done, because it may or may not happen. And then during it, there's a mindset that I would really like everybody to adopt, which is sort of openness and being in the moment and being present for it, because that will give you the maximum amount of joy. And afterwards, I'm going to talk about how to keep your gains. So how to keep those things and then, you know, use them in your life, use them in your painting, and how to stay inspired, because that's what I want for people who come to our workshop. It's not so much how many paintings they did, it's like afterwards, how did they use this experience in order to improve their art and improve their lives and make their lives more creative. We can do it. We're artists. We can do anything. We are the creators. So before you go, you should look at the workshop and set some goals. So actually, Kyle was the one that told me about this. So he came to Huang, and I asked him, I said, okay, so let's do advice for other people. He says, we should look at the instructor and set some goals, you know, and then as we know from just back and forth with all the guests, like let people know what you want to gain from the instructors. If you put it out there, I want this, I want this, I want this, it might sound a bit pushy, but in fact, what you're doing is you are stating for yourself, you're putting in what you want to have goals. And so then if the instructors know that, then they're going to, if they can, help you achieve that, because that's what we're interested in doing. Also, you know, you should look at the instructor's work and decide, well, what is it that I need to learn from this instructor, right? So it's so important. This brings up why I do what we do and why it changes lives, right? So before you go on a workshop, you have your life. And then you do the workshop and you see a different life. So that's what we want to present, because when you're in your world, that's your world, and you try to improve it and everything, but you know, it's like what really makes growth is when you cross over a line into an area you don't really know and you don't really understand. That's where you're going to make gains, okay? And also when you see something more ideal, like when you go in and you see in an ideal environment, then you can compare it to what your existing environment is, and only then can you go, oh, I could so do this, you know, I could change my life a little. I could make that whole, how about just making my whole studio experience like so much more inviting? You know, when you're there and you can set up your easel and the weather's fantastic and you look at something beautiful, it's all laid out to you, but then you go home and you're in your wee dark cave, you know, you're painting all by yourself. Well, why not make your studio that space, you know? And you probably wouldn't even think of doing this if you weren't transported into this other environment. Now you can compare. That's what I'm saying. So, you know, now to go into the studio, you can have your favorite music, your favorite chair, you know, you can have some snacks there that you really like, you know, lay some breadcrumbs to get you in there, because once you're in there and you're painting, then you're in your own world, and that's what we want to get you to, that level. So back to the workshop. So before you go, like, make goals, look at the instructor, compare your work to their work and go, okay, so how do I get from here to there? And figure that out by writing down like what it is about what they do. You know, how do they get that atmospheric perspective? How do they infuse so much light into their painting so that when you go, you already have that in mind instead of just sort of turning up and seeing what will happen. Also, you have to expect the unexpected. That's why I'm good at what I do, because I take full responsibility for everything that happens and for everything that was unexpected. And I just go, okay, so how do I handle that? How do I handle that? How do I handle that? And just figure it out. So expect the unexpected and enjoy it, you know, and be open to teaching. Don't go there saying, well, I'm going to show them my best work. You'll figure out you're there to learn for you. So if it's you've written out what you want to learn, like shoot for that. Don't try and go there going, oh, I'd love to come back with a masterpiece. Yeah, we would all. But if you come back with skills that you've gained, then you've come back with something truly worthwhile. And it's only when you cross that line into a new territory, we just talked about that, that is really, you know, it's even like a child when they're learning how to read. They don't know how to read, so they cross over. It's not comfortable, but then they learn how to read. Same with learning how to cycle on a bicycle. All of these things, very important. So when you're in a workshop, step out of that comfort zone. Ask the instructor, you know, what can I do to get more light in this painting? Why is this not working? Be very specific. Don't just go, how can I improve this? You know, it's such an open-ended question. Ask them very specific things and see if you can cross over and get some new skills. All right, so here we go. Be prepared. Ask the instructor. Ask the instructor. What advice does he or she have for you to get the most out of their workshop? So we usually do that right on day one. You know, we have a sort of Q&A, go back and forth so that people know and the instructors know what is expected from the student body. But you'll also ask the instructors. So we do that a lot. We say, hey, you know, we're getting questions like, how can they be really prepared? And the number one thing is drawing, because it's a skill, it's a mechanical skill, it's a structural skill. So it's, you know, there's that dichotomy of like structure, and then there's the sort of the gesture that you put into your work, or the artistry that you put into your work. But underneath it is the structure. It's definitely something that can be learned, and it's something that needs to be practiced. Musicians do scales, artists should be drawing. So every instructor we talk to says draw, draw, draw every day, because that's where students bog down, and it's the one thing that they keep saying, hey, your drawing's off, your drawing's off. So if your drawing is not off, then it helps. And by the way, I also use apps. I'll just be totally honest with this. When I'm in a landscape, I'll pull out art tools. I think it's called art tools, and it has a grid and it can flip it into black and white. And why I do that is because I can compose a picture really fast. It has the grid which matches the grid of the proportions of my panel, and it saved me 20 minutes. I'm taking those 20 minutes because in that 20 minutes the sun has already moved a bit. So just quickly go, that's where this goes, this is that, you know, get your proportions right, and then I put it away. You know, I'm not using that to draw. I'm just using that to quickly get the perimeters and the proportions incorrectly and the masses incorrectly, and then I put it away, and then I start. So that saved me a lot of time going, yeah, I made that too big, I made this too small. So that's another little tip that you can use, art tools. Okay, so materials, this is an important one too. So you should be supplied with a material list from the organization and ask them what parts of that are supplied. So, you know, a lot of artists use very chromatic palettes, like it's full spectrum. You know, for example, Kwong Ho, he's not that much of a colorist, whereas Adrian Stein, his wife and partner, she is a colorist, so she's very chromatic, and he's very, no, I wouldn't say he's monochromatic, he is not, but he's definitely not all about the color. So he just says bring what you use, where she has like specific colors that she likes to use. But if you're traveling, all of that weighs a lot. So I would say limit it to what you can. You know, obviously we talk to our instructors and we ask them to give us a materials list that's pared down. And then sometimes there's some special secret sauce colors. So when we hosted Rose Franson, she has some secret sauce colors. It's a beautiful yellow green that she just adores, and like King's Blue, things like this. We bought those, so we can just squeeze them out when you need them, but everybody just sort of had their basic colors, and then they all had what they needed to paint. So that is really important. But then the other point, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is you need to have a plein air system. And so it's whatever you use. And people often say, well, you know, I'm not really a plein air painter, but I'm coming in this, what do I need to get? And we send them to various people. So I love the Strata, I love the Edge Pro, I love the Open M box, but they're all completely different, or the Coulter system. So you just have to know what works for you. You know, I like a big table. I like to put my cup of tea and like my brushes and all my bits and bobs. So I actually quite like a system that moves out like this, but I also love The Edge Pro, because I love that clamshell, keeps the palette right next to my painting. The Strata is like indestructible, you know, but it's a little heavier. So you have to pick what's right for you. But yeah, and also, you know, if something goes wrong, we have extra supplies in case something, you know, goes completely sideways, because there's nothing worse than going with your French easel with all those nuts and bolts and suddenly you lose something, right? So we're usually prepared to help to jump in and make sure, let's face it, duct tape fixes everything, right? So we have plenty of that, and we'll make sure that, you know, you can paint. So the other thing you would think about is what you're transporting, because canvases is really out of the question because they're on stretchers, and that's kind of silly. So think about panels. So we love Raymar's panels, and we love artwork. Lauren, can you put that in the chat? I've just suddenly gone blank on that.
Multimedia artboard.
Multimedia artboards, thank you so much. They're both great. So I love linen, and since I've started painting on this and been around a lot of different materials, that's my go-to. So when I'm in France, actually, sometimes I'll buy linen that's stretched, and when I'm traveling, I just literally cut it off the stretcher bars and then roll it up to take it home. So you're also limited by your suitcase, right? So don't come with a huge roll of canvas and then go, I can't fit this in. But if you roll it up, you can fit it in. Another thing that we get is wet panel carriers. So Raymar does a brilliant wet panel carrier. They're made out of that gator board, or it's a corrugated plastic board. Is super light, super durable. I've had several of these, and they're great. And you just slide in your panels, and if you have panels, you can slide in several. We also, like, if you need it, we can supply like pieces of foam board or gator board, things that are light, if you bring canvas and tape, so you can just tape it down. So a lot of it's sort of rough and ready, but we have a lot of stuff now. When I first started to do this, it was really difficult because I was a traveler too. And so, you know, if I'm bringing all the stuff that people forget, it would be crazy. But now, because I'm established, our company's established in these locations, I basically have, you know, I have a plein air system in America, I have a plein air system in France, I have a plein air system in Scotland, but that's me personally. But we also have these big vans that we just arrive, and out pops this, you know, all the materials. So we're very fortunate to be able to do that. But anyway, make sure you have the proper supplies and that they are correctly packaged. So some people, they'll take each tube and they will wrap it in bubble wrap and they'll put it in a baggie, and it's fantastic. I just get a Tupperware box and everything's in there. I usually shrink wrap, you know, the plastic wrap, the whole thing really, really tight. And before I finish it, I put in a letter to the TSA, which we will provide to you should you need that. So, you know, by the way, you should be going to our landing page, which is workshops.in-france/OPA, because once you're on our contact list, we can provide you with all of this information. Just ask for it, you know. Also, we are doing a free giveaway. I think for everybody that signs up today, we're going to be pulling out a name and doing a rosemary brush giveaway, because we love those brushes. They are absolutely fantastic. So anyway, that's what I'm saying in the painting supplies. So I know that if the TSA opens a box and there's beautiful oil paints there, it's very obvious what they are. You open Julie Snyder's box, the Tupperware box, and it's just so crusted with old paint and tubes. They're probably like, oh my God, just take that away and let her go. But you should have what you need. Also on that TSA letter, I have my phone number saying, hey, I'm a passenger, call me if there's a problem, blah, blah, blah. And then you also include a materials data sheet, which you can get from any of the paint manufacturers. Michael Harding has it, Gamblin has it, Sinelli has it. Just go on their website and download some information, and it talks about flash points and things, which means explosive points of paint. And paint is way, way lower than that flash point where they have. So so the TSA are run by government officials who do not understand the nuances of oil paint. So when you use the word paint, they kind of go, paint, you know, it's a problem. But if you use the word color, like these are my colors, these are my oil colors, these are my watercolors, and they're vegetable based, which they are. And then you include the information sheet and you use those words and that proof, then they're like, oh, fine, they're professional, let them go. So yeah, so these sort of things you do have to think about. I've never had anything held up by customs or TSA. So I know that this is good advice. And I travel a lot, so it's fine. And the other thing is, of course, you're packing. I know I'm talking to both men and women here, but the girls really need to know, do we need dress up clothes? Well, I would say bring something that's maybe a little like a top that's a little sparkly, or a scarf, etc. But don't need to bring like a full-on, black tie. And also those shoes take up so much room, right? So I just like maybe bring a pair of boots or something that you can wear while you're traveling. But we're all artists. We do go out to dinner one night, a couple of places. So it is nice to throw on something pretty. But like I say, that's what markets are for, right? Because we do go to the French market. So that's a really good place to dress up, which is really cool. But yeah, no, you don't have to bring a lot of dress up clothes. Bring oil paint. It's much better off. You're much better prepared. See here. Okay. So I think this is probably the most important, preparing the mindset, so get excited about what you can learn, and like I've already talked, don't go for the masterpiece, just get excited about what you can learn and get inspired and stay inspired. So you can do that by looking at the art of the region. You can look at that, your favorite traditional painters, the Impressionists, for example, or you can talk to the instructors that you're going with and just keep it really excited. And being excited really means being in the moment, because if you've had like losses in the past and you worry about the future, it really, what that does, it drains those pleasure moments from the present time. So you really want to just be in the moment. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about the future. Just while you're there, get the most out of this. Enjoy the guests, and, be open to talk to people, be upbeat, make it a duty to be happy, and you will be happy and you'll have a great time, and it'll make it more enjoyable for everybody, And if you have a problem, then take it to the person who can fix it, which is either the team that's running it or the instructor. But it's really not very worthwhile if you sit and start whining to another guest, because all you're going to do is bring the whole tone of the place down, and they can't fix it anyway, right? So go to the owners or the organizers, get them to fix the problem. That's what they're there for. That is their job. But celebrate all the steps that you take and be happy to be there and engage with the culture and the other guests, and you will just end up getting more and more out of it. It's interesting for me, I think, when I travel, you travel and you're getting from A to B, but if you travel with the lens of an artist, it doesn't diminish the experience. It just expands it beyond, your wildest imagination, because you can just see all these different levels and nuances of culture and life and humanity. It's the best thing. So just get excited about it, and you will get so much more out of the experience. And if you're taking notes, so if you're getting a demo or a lecture, by all means take notes, but keep them brief and precise. Okay, so if you're taking notes, take them down, but be in the moment, learn. But then when you go back, that is when you will be able to use those more. So demos are priceless. So you should be watching those. I find I learn more from watching a demo sometimes than I do from struggling through a point, because that's where you get your aha moments. And then always ask the instructor, or we tell them whatever the instructor has told us, is it okay to take photographs? Can we video you painting? And some of them will say, I don't mind you videoing me painting, but what they don't want, obviously, is for you to video some entire demo and then throw it on social, because that's their intellectual property, and that's not okay for you to do that. But they'll usually tell you. So one artist said, take as many photos as you want, but don't take any videos. Another one says, I don't care, take anything you want, take any videos you want, I don't care. Another one will say, no photos, no videos until we're finished the demo. Okay, fine. So just find out what their little policy is. But I would ask, especially if you can record your own critiques. So, excuse me, when the instructor's critiquing your work, does this happen to you? Instructors critiquing my work, and I'm so like this, I'm like, trying to learn everything and not be totally introverted at the same time, that actually I come out the other end with remembering so little. I remember everything that was said about the other paintings, and it's such a learning moment, right? Critiques are brilliant because you learn so much. But when they critique your work, it's so like, you're in the spotlight. So what I do is I record that and ask them if it's okay, because then you can look at it later and you go, oh, okay, now I get it, now I get it, now I get it. And also, I think it's a very good idea, if you can, to keep a journal at night. So there you're not talking necessarily about all the techniques you learn, but you might go, oh, Katie and I went into this space, like in the Van Gogh place, like we go to Van Gogh's place where he lived for a year, painted like 145 of his most established paintings, including Starry Night, that's Saint Remy, it's the asylum in Saint Remy. You know, you might go, well, we opened this door and we went in and then we were thrown out, you know, so that was a moment. So you learn it, or, you know, I found this fantastic wine, I've got to find it at home, you learn it. And then later on you look back, and these things, if you didn't write them in the journal, you wouldn't have them. So that's always a great thing. Shirley, who is my teammate, and she works with me and runs these workshops with me, she keeps a journal. And if it wasn't for her journal, I don't know what we did this year, even though every day I'm doing everything. It's amazing. So in conclusion, let's do this. Getting the most out of a workshop number. This is very important. It's after the workshop. Okay, so you're going home, get those notes out right away while they're still fresh in your mind. Look at your photographs, look at your phone, and then write out anything that you felt was a key understanding, any aha moments, anything that was applicable, any techniques you went, oh, that really applies to me. And then what I do is I write it out long form. So I might have taken the note was, make a mark, remember direction of sun. And then when I get home, I'll go, always remember to make an indication on the side of the painting or the back of the painting to show the direction of the sun. So that when I come across it, how do I do that tree again? I remember this is where the sun is from. And you write that out. You probably never look at it again, but you know what? It will actually go into your understanding and you start to use it more. That's just what I found. And I really, really, really recommend that. And also remember, do remember the things you remembered. When you have a note against a painting, it actually puts you back even more into that moment. That's why photographs don't really help us. But if you were there, you've got your study, you made some notes, and it might have been about the smell of the lavender and the bees and blah, 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 blah. And then you look at that study later and you look at your notes, you're back there. You're back there. So then when you're creating your larger work, you just have more to access and more to use in your work. It's really important. Also, use your new muscles. You've got painting, you've got the momentum, get painting, get in the studio and just keep going. And, you know, you might be drinking twice as much coffee as you did before, but that's fine. Stay caffeinated. If that's what makes it go right, do it. And then please use the momentum to make a more creative life. We're artists, we have that special gift that we can create. And, you know, whether it's just, you know, I'm just going to start my morning and I'm going to make that amazing goat's cheese tart that Shirley Hambrick made on workshops in France, you know, with the red onions and the balsamic glaze and blah, blah, blah. Do it, because now your life is just that little bit richer, you know, and stay inspired. Get the moment, stay inspired, stay motivated, stay connected. You know, you have your group and that keeps it all going. That's what we want for our guests, that they come away, and that's why they keep turning up year after year, because they get so much out of it that extends to their lives, not just that workshop. Hope you all got something out of that. I know I speak really fast, but that's how I go.
I think that was fantastic, Julie. Really.
Thank you. This, by the way, was one of our groups, and you can see here I am on the screen left, and right in the middle at the back there, that's Jane Hunt, no less, when we were in Provence together. Isn't that great?
Fun memory. Yeah. I'm really excited about coming back. And I think Julie did a lovely job of explaining everything, sort of all the logistics that go into it, but it's hard to explain just how much fun we have. It really does become like a big family. And so I'm excited to announce, we weren't actually going to announce until next week, but I'm here, so why not? And my buddy Michelle Usabelli, I believe, is on the call, for those of you who know her. So Michelle and I are going to be teaching again with workshops, or I'm going to be teaching again, and Michelle will be coming for the first time. We're going to be doing sort of a joint workshop next summer in June with these guys. And I just think it's exciting because Michelle and I teach so differently and paint so differently. But as Julie mentioned, that's fantastic because we each have our own way of teaching, yet there's so much crossover, and then our students get almost double the inspiration. And so anyway, that's pretty exciting. Can't wait. And
yeah, Lauren's got a pre-registration link in the chat for anybody that's interested in that, you know, which is fantastic, right? But you're right. Go Cool. Yeah, I was just saying it expands your vocabulary so much when you have more than one instructor, and it's, yeah, get a little bit outside your comfort zone and just see, well, that, you know, you might end up adopting something and making your work quite unique.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you guys are very generously offering a discount code for OPA members for any of your workshops, correct? And there's
That's
some
correct.
amazing, do you want to talk about a few of the ones coming up?
Yes, please. That would be great. So we actually, like I mentioned before, Teresa and Aldo Balding, by the way, has been one of my favorite artists forever. He catches sunlight on his painting so beautifully. He's also a figure painter, so that I love too. So they're going to be in that chateau that was behind me earlier, but we also have Joseph Zabovnik. Okay, he's a watercolor painter, but and I don't say that because I'm talking to oil painters. But I'll tell you, I've never learned so much about my own art when I sat and tried to do watercolor. It really, really informed a lot of the way I see. I'm like, oh, they see so differently. So I found that very valuable. Then we have Italy. We have an art retreat coming up in Italy, which is fantastic. And then lavender season, which I believe is fully sold out. And then we're going to Scotland, to a fantastic place in Scotland. Let me see if I can stop this share, I could show you a picture of that. So we're going to Scotland, and when an art retreat followed by Daniel Gerhardt's. This is all on the website, by the way. So Daniel Gerhardt's is coming. That one is sold out, but there is a wait list. And believe it or not, it's the people that sign up on the wait list last are always the people that, if the cancellation happens, they're the ones that could go, even though we already have a wait list. So in other words, do not despair. And then we're going back to Châteauneuf-de-Gadagne to do Glorious Provence, which is in Provence. It's an art retreat. And then we have another fall Italy art retreat. And then I have Dave Santiani's coming. And I think Dave,
he's on today too, I think.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that because, you know, he's such an exceptional landscape painter, and it's a pure plein air workshop. So for people who are really grooving on plein air painting, this is a fantastic workshop to do. And then at the very end, we're actually launching our first petite retreat. So it's a little mini mighty retreat. It was mighty because it's action packed, but it's shorter. And so for people that can't come for like 10 days, this is like 6 days. It's 5 days of pure painting on location, so you get a lot going on there. It's going to be really fantastic, and of course it's priced less because it's shorter. So again, if that's a consideration, that is definitely worth something looking at. And then in 2024 we have an enormous wonderful program, including the Americans in Paris that I mentioned before, Jane Hunt with Michelle Usabelli, fantastic. We also have Lisa Hughes with sorry, I mixed them up. Deborah Hughes with Lisa Skelly. So one is an oil painter and one is pastel, but they actually both cross over, and you can learn so much from both of them. So that's another duo. And, you know, so it's so fun when these two instructors get up and they do demos and you're watching the two and how they approach it, and questions are flying through the air. It's just so fun. And then actually we're having Rose Franson come back in 2024 to Scotland in our big majestic, well, we call it a castle, but it's a big estate. It's huge, it's gorgeous. And then again, Italy, we're in Italy, and Joseph is coming back with Lisa Wang. So Lisa Wang is coming this year as well. So Joseph and Lisa Wang are paint together. She's a fantastic watercolor painter who is also an oil painter. So that for me was really interesting to find out and ask all those questions about the crossover, because he's pure watercolor and she knows what I'm talking about. The desperation involved there. So that's actually some of what we're doing next year. And I believe Dave Chevlino's coming as well at the end of the year. So super excited program. And that's what I'm working on right now. I think I have like 4 days left to get all those contracts done and everything up on the website. So things move all the time with us. But please, if you have any other questions or anything you need to know, now is a good time to ask.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just looking through. Mark, do you see any questions here that I'm missing? I haven't been.
No, Lauren's been doing a great job answering questions as we've gone through. There is
Oh,
one here.
perfect.
So
Oh yeah.
Mel
Julie,
is
did you want-
asking about COVID restrictions or requirements for entering into obviously into Europe or the UK, whatever else. So basically the question to you, Julie, is do you guide people through that process? Because I understand as well that there's a new, is it the ETIAS authorizations coming in next year and stuff? So do you guide people through that? And do you want to explain that a little bit more?
Oh my gosh, we are so expert at this. So at the beginning of 2022, you know, we were cycling people through, we were getting them all tested. We arranged everything so they could come through, they could leave. And then we were doing the same for Britain, which was really strict at the time. And then 2 weeks before we decided to go to Britain, they actually dropped all restrictions whatsoever. But this can change at any moment. I mean, just changes all the time. This is here from Britain, by the way. This is one of the places we go. Another one. Awesome, right? So yeah, we guide you through. If there's anything that needs to be said, we will have it all set up. If you need to get tested on day 2, we handle it for you. If you need to get tested before you leave, we handle it for you. If you're not vaccinated and you wonder if you can travel, we give all that information to you. We also, because we've experienced this, we have masks in all our vans. We have sanitizer everywhere. We have our own protocols. If somebody gets sick, they're immediately isolated, and you know the group is kept safe and so forth. So we have, like I say, a lot of experience with this because of last year, but now actually it doesn't really seem to be much of a concern anymore. And most people are vaccinated. So it makes it a lot easier to sort of move around. But you know, that time in France where you had to have this special code and everybody had the QR code and nobody had the QR code if they were from America. I mean, you literally just showed your paper vaccination slip and that was good to go anywhere. So they're accommodating too. French love to put in a lot of protocols because, you know, basically we're all just trying to survive here. But sometimes that becomes a lot of administration and it's difficult, but we got it. We got it. There's always another way to do everything.
We have another great question. Someone just asked, what is the structure like at the retreats? And she heard you briefly mention a little bit about mentorship if you need it. And she wanted to ask what that looked like.
Awesome question. So we actually survey our people before we go, and we do a couple of things at retreats that are a little bit different. So one of the things is that I might give a mentorship talk. So say like everybody needs it. Let's meet before we go out painting today. And then I'll talk about how to visually approach a scene, what makes a scene worth painting, because a lot of beginner painters, and I know I was there myself, they see things and they don't see the dark light pattern and they don't see composition and things that would really make a good painting, or how you can take that thing and then turn it into good painting by making sure that these elements are in. So things like that. And we show lots of examples and we do some drills, or it might be all about perspective and say, hey guys, you know, anybody who wants to know it, let's meet on the terrace at wine time and I'm going to show you perspective. So we come in and then pads and notepads if they're interested, because you're getting all these different levels. So some people are like, I don't need to know perspective. I know perspective. It's fine. So that's what mentorship's like. So what it's not like a step-by-step approach. However, if somebody wanted to and say, you know, I'm not quite sure how to approach this, to say, well, why don't you come and paint with me today? And they'll just set their easel up and say, let's just paint side by side, and I'll be painting, I'll look over and say, you know, try this. Oh, I love that. You know, that's good. So strengthen that and just help them on their way. But it's not a structured thing like today we're going to learn all about values and then tomorrow it's all edges or whatever that is for any given instructor.
It's Mark, just going to quickly jump in to remind people that if you do need to leave us now, we may go on with a few more questions, but if you do need to leave us now, there will be a link in a couple of days via email where you can watch this again, so you won't miss the tail end of the questions as they're going through. So I just thought I'd drop that one in.
Also, I'll say on all workshops, but specifically and especially on the art retreats, there's a lot more sort of group experience where we're looking at each other's work. Hey, let's see what we did today. People put out their work. Now you're an oil painter next to a pastelist, next to an abstract painter, right? I mean, how interesting is that? So you might think, well, that doesn't, you know, it's so different, but it's not. There's so many things that apply across the boards to all these different media, but because in the same painting, the structure is still what holds it all together. And it's just really interesting where you can do that. So we had one girl from Canada, Brenda, who came one year, and through circumstance, she ended up having to paint in watercolor, and it changed her life. So she just became a watercolor painter at the workshop. She'd only been painting for only a year. So she was still trying out different things, but she's actually a concert pianist. But then she came and she did that, and then she would come back every year because her life just changed so much. And within a year, she was selling work and, you know, just loving her life so much because now she was an artist and watercolor just suited her. But yeah, so it's just interesting what you can learn in the most unexpected of circumstances, actually, you know, if you're open to it.
Hey, Julie, we have one really short question, which is just what was the art tool you mentioned, or was it just called Art Tools, the app you were describing that you used to
I
simplify?
think it's just called Art Tools here. It's right on here. Let me just see what it's called. Art Tools. There it is. Yeah, Art Tools. Two
Okay.
words, Art Tools.
Okay, cool. So that was a short one. Great. And then we had a couple other ones. One person asked if someone had a lot of materials that they wanted to bring, would they be able to mail them in advance?
Yeah, they can. Don't make sure you talk to us about that, because if you just mail them to yourself, you're not going to ever see your art supplies again. So depending on the country, you have to mail them to the owner, and they have to notify the owner that they're coming, and that they can hold them for you. Because if it's in your name, even if it's your name care of the owner, they want to see that proof. They're not just going to give that package to anybody, and then I'll end up getting, you know, a lot of extra work for the owners, which we really try and avoid. And then on the reverse, in France, we sometimes have a boxing party. No, we actually get boxes from the post office. They're prepaid and you can stuff them. And we also have wine jackets. I'm not kidding, they're puffer jackets for wine. How awesome is that? So we give them out to people who want to take wine and olive oil, and they put them in the puffer jacket. They send a box, and it's amazing that protects them, and it does. Send your oil paints back because they're heavy, and that gives you ladies more room in your suitcase for buying things at the market. Very important.
We have another quick question. Someone asked if you are able to travel abroad if you are not vaccinated.
Yes, you are. I don't know of any country that still has that in place, that would be a barrier, but I'm not saying that they're not. Certain countries, more third world countries, to be honest, have more citizens to protect in that, but nope, that's all. Nope, not anymore. Not at all.
Great. I think that's most of them. One person did ask, how difficult is it to get a visa for a Europe holiday?
Well, if you're, depends where you're from. If you're from the United States, Britain, any of basically those countries, or if you're European, you don't even need it. But if you're from those countries, as long as you're there for less than 90 days, out of 180 days. So if you're there for 3 months out of 6 months, you don't need a visa. But if you're there for more than 90 days in any 6-month period, then you'll need a visa.
Okay. Well, are there any other questions, Lauren? We need to kind of wrap things up here.
I think one last quick one. How many is the maximum number of students in each class? And that's the last one.
Okay, so it depends. Each one is slightly different. We tend to want to have like between we won't really run a workshop with more, well, what I say, we always run our workshops, we never cancel anything, but usually 10 or 12 has been a minimum. But for some, especially with 2 instructors, we can actually get more students. So sometimes we have as many as 18. And then we also have some non-painting partners. But if you have that many students, you can break it up into 2 groups. So we cap it at any rate, like 18 with 1 instructor would be the maximum, but I wouldn't consider that necessarily ideal. But remember, in 10 days, it's not like it's a 3-day workshop. This is a 10-day thing. So you do get a lot of like one-on-one time as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you, Julie, for explaining why destination
Thanks for having me. It's just a wonderful organization, OPA, and I'm happy to be a member of it and to talk to the membership today. It was a really nice opportunity. Thanks.
We're very happy to have you. And thanks, everyone. And we will see you next time. Take care.